Get right down to it. I'm going to interview Starhawk, who's one of my favorite authors, and she's an amazing activist and has done activism of many kinds worldwide. She's also a permaculture goddess and pagan priestess and amazing human being, and I give you Starhawk.
Thank you. It's really an honor to be here, and thank you all for coming out today and being part of this. It's so important right now when there's so much violence of all sorts that is surrounding us and that is erupting all over, to have people stand up and rise up and say, no, we don't want to live in a world where sexual violence is the norm. We don't want to live in a world where racial violence and oppression is the norm. We don't want to live in a world where children have to be afraid when they go to school that someone's going to come in and shoot them. We want to shift this culture. And sometimes we call it rape culture, sometimes we call it racism, but all of it is a culture that says some people are entitled to determine other people's choices about their bodies, about their lives. Some people have the right to control the resources, to impose violence on others in order to control them. And we need to stand for a different culture, a culture that is based on those things that have been associated with women. I'm not one of those people that says women are innately nurturing and kind and loving and men are innately aggressive, because I think those are qualities that have been assigned to women and men. And I believe and I know that there are beautiful men who are incredible, nurturing, loving, caring fathers and sons and brothers and lovers, and I know there are women who are strong, powerful, kick-ass protectors. Those qualities are not necessarily tied to your physical genitalia or even your DNA. And I know that there are many people who don't fall into categories of gender at all and are also struggling for the right to determine their own identities. And we need to be in support of all of those who are struggling for gender justice, because it is that assigning of those qualities to different genders and then saying, we are going to privilege one over the other. We are going to give men the right and entitlement to women's bodies. We are going to privilege all of these things that have been associated with men, mostly aggression. And men are going to be sort of conditioned to be constantly the aggressors and to feel like if they are not being angry and aggressive, they're not being manly. That is part of the destructive culture that I think is destructive to men and destructive to women and destructive to people of all genders, and that actually maintains that disparity in power and privilege that actually allows a few men to have control over all of others. So what we need to stand for is a world where we look at every person and say, each one of us has an inherent value. Each one of us is precious and sacred. If we see diversity of culture, of race, of gender, of orientation, of any sort, in nature, diversity is resilience. Diversity is strength. You have a diverse forest that has hundreds of different plants and trees that can stand up to a bug or to an attack so much better than if you have a plantation of genetically cloned pine forests or something, and you get a bug in it, it all goes down. So we need to start looking at diversity as a value, as something that enriches all of us. And we need to honor, again, that precious spirit that is within every human being. We need to stand up and say no to the violence and to the policies and to the lies and to the corruption and to all of that that's going on all around us. And we need to be strong and even militant in saying no to that and in standing against that. But we are always stronger if we know what we're saying yes to, if we have a vision of what we want, and if we are acting not out of hate, but out of what we love, out of the love that we have for one another, out of the love that we have for every single person who has within their heart that great desire to be part of making a world of justice and balance, out of that love that we have for the earth, for all the things that live and grow and are so in jeopardy right now, out of the love that we have for these beautiful children who are growing up around us and deserve to have a world that is safe and that is thriving and that is viable for them. So, You know, last night was Dia de los Muertos, and I was in San Francisco as part of the procession there that we have, and they've had every year for the last 36 years. And it was such a beautiful night. There were thousands and thousands of people that were out for the procession. There were so many people that had built altars, and such beautiful altars that honored people's beloved dead. You know, there were candles, there were costumes, there were sugar skulls, there were all of those beautiful things. And to me, it was a reminder that we actually can live in a world, and some of the time we do live in a world where we can honor each other's cultures, where we can participate with respect, where we can see the beauty of what is happening in every different culture, and it enriches all of us. And we come together around those things that are common to all of us. Every single one of us here has people that we love who have died. And if we, by some chance, haven't experienced that yet in your life, believe me, you will, because all of us are going to die, and death is a common factor that we can't escape. So if we can recognize that commonality of our humanity, again, and we can embrace that diversity, we really can live in a world that I think is richer and more colorful and more beautiful and far more fun than a world where we're all the same. Much more interesting. So finally, I just want to say, I'm sure I'm not the first one to stand up and say this, and you probably aren't the people I need to say it to, but I hope we are all going to get out there on Tuesday and vote, if you haven't done so already. Yeah, and encourage your friends to vote, and if you have time, you know, this is a great weekend to volunteer, to help get out the vote, to canvass, to phone bank. I was able to do that a little bit last week, and it was actually quite interesting to have, you know, when we're here in Santa Rosa or the Bay Area, we are in kind of a nice little bubble in some ways. And, you know, phone banking down to Orange County and talking to people, you know, I don't often get to talk to Republicans, honestly, or Trump supporters, right? And to really listen and hear what they have to say. I think in our political movements now, unfortunately, we spend far too much time on Facebook talking to people who agree with us, or, you know, having virulent arguments and defriending people who don't agree with us, instead of actually engaging face-to-face with people and being willing to listen. Because even if you're talking to somebody whose ideas you find absolutely abhorrent, you can always learn something by listening, even if what you learn is how a person like that thinks and sees the world. So I would also encourage you in the next few days maybe to reach out and have a conversation with somebody that you think might have differences from you or different opinions from you. And to think about building a movement that is welcoming. You know, people who are progressive, honestly, we tend to be sort of judgy people. Right? We judge, like, look at the world and say, that's wrong, and that's wrong, and that's wrong, and we're right. You know? But I think we need to think about building a movement that is welcoming to people who haven't already been involved and haven't already been engaged and might not know, like, the correct way to say everything and might not know, you know, the exact right terminology that someone has decided we have to use for everything. And that might make mistakes. Because we can't actually turn this country around by being a small little, you know, pure fringe. We need to become the mainstream, and we need to shift that culture again from a culture that glorifies aggression and glorifies violence and glorifies rape, only, of course, when it's done by the right people, to a culture that says, no, each one of us is a valuable and a precious human being, and we have to stand with the people, with the immigrants, with the refugees, with the people who've been victims of violence as they prayed in their synagogues, as they prayed in their churches or their mosques, as they went to school, as they attempted to cross the border and apply for asylum and apply for safety. We need to make this country, again, a place that people can come to as a refuge, because I don't know about you, but I would not be here if my grandparents hadn't been able to come to the U.S. and find refuge here in, 100 years ago. And I think for many of us, we would not be here if it hadn't been for that. So we have a big responsibility now, and I think we have a great opportunity. I'm hopeful that we are going to see on Tuesday a wave of people standing up and taking action and using their voice and starting to turn around this slide toward more violence and more destruction. And I want to ask you to just take a moment right now and look around at the people who are here and acknowledge that every single one of us who is here is part of making that wave, part of making that transition. I believe we're here in this time right now because we chose to be here, because we wanted to be at that moment that's like the climax of the movie. We wanted to be in that moment where it all comes down, and that each one of us, if we look into our hearts and we see what we're called to do, and we stand forward and use our voices and do it, will be part of making that great change. So overall, I think this is a great moment to be alive, because it's certainly not boring. And the choices that we make and the things that we do are very, very important right now. So again, thank you all, and let's go out there and turn this country around.